Following the $1 billion aid that was given by World Bank to India for the health infrastructure, World Bank has extended another $1 billion to India, and this time for the social security program. World Bank's country director, Junaid Ahmad, joining us on this leg of the broadcast. Mr. Ahmad, many thanks for taking your time out and speaking to us at ET Now. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Last time I remember when we were talking, you did tell us that there will be more such programs that World Bank will look to fund for India. But the aid this time is coming in after the massive migrant crisis that we saw in the country that has been happening for the last 50 odd days. I just want to understand from you, what will now be the constituents of this $1 billion aid, the help that is being provided for the social sector program?
Thank you very much. Let me remind you of the logic of what's happening here. The health intervention as a result of COVID around the world has resulted in a very unique intervention, which is social distancing and the slowdown of the economy. I mean, very rarely do you see governments around the world slowing down the economy in order to solve a health issue. This is what COVID has done. But because it's slowing down the economics of a country, you face a dilemma of lives versus livelihoods. And I think no government in the world is willing to accept that trade-off. And so to support the poor and the vulnerable during this slowdown, social protection interventions have now become very dominant. And so India too has engaged in social protection to be a bridge for the poor and the vulnerable between the time that health intervention has slowed down the economy and hopefully a revival that should be coming in the weeks or months ahead. So this social protection is exactly sequenced in that sense. Its nature is exactly what you have talked about. COVID around the world has revealed the fault lines in our economic, governance, and social systems. If you look at the West, it shows that the incidence of COVID has really been on minority communities, with a lot of the fatality in minority communities. You've seen the impact on aged. In this country, and mine, Bangladesh, in fact in South Asia, what you see is that the impact of COVID has been on the urban worker, it has been on the migrant worker, it has been on the workers in the unorganized sector who don't traditionally have access to social protection. What government of India has done and what we're supporting is pivoting of the government's social protection system, which is largely a rural-based one, into incorporating migrants, into incorporating the unorganized worker in the urban area. But it's also one that is beginning to look at a stronger relationship between the center and the state in terms of responding to the local condition. So what this social protection system is doing is really one of pivoting and creating a platform which fills that fault line that COVID has revealed, the fault line where migrants may have been left out, unorganized workers may have been left out, and strengthening of the response of state governments in India's federalism. It is a watershed moment because India, I think, is truly making its social protection system a pan-national one, not just simply one that's focused on the rural area.
Mr. Ahmad, I want to understand from you, just yesterday we did see the government announcing, one leg of the package which focused on migrants, which focused on providing one nation, one ration card as well, and ensuring that some of those linkages with respect to various social security programs can be figured out in the long term. Having said that, what in the World Bank's view will be the future challenges to ensure that happens?
I think what you're seeing today is first the pivot of making, in effect, a social protection system that was largely rural to one that's national. To shift from one type of approach to another requires quite a bit of strengthening of implementation, strengthening of how you identify the recipients, ensuring that urban systems, migrants are able to get access to food, access to cash grants, ensuring portability of the system, ensuring that the different schemes, because there are about 400 plus schemes that underpin government of India's social protection system, to coordinate them. And one area of coordination is using NDMA, which has a window on State Disaster Response Fund, which basically usually gets a scheme-based support to making it linked to a social protection system where as national disasters hit, such as a pandemic, that there are resources that are available for state governments to actually use to respond to their local conditions. So there's quite a bit of changes that are going to happen, which Government of India is already beginning to take, where you having connections between one system to the other. But I have to tell you that this is something that Government of India builds on its strength. And its strengths are, it has a very comprehensive PDS system. It has a system of Jan Dhan, of Aadhaar, of bank accounts that exist. Over 300 million bank accounts, predominantly in the hands of women that can get cash transfer. It has a Manrega, so as people move between urban and rural, you can have both the urban system kick in and the rural system kick in. So it's building on these strengths that India is able to move towards a pan-national system.
Junaid, we're given to understand that this is not the end of it. There is another aid that is in the works, and this one is going to be for the small and medium enterprises, coming right after the kind of announcements that we saw 2 days ago by the finance minister as well. She has in fact not just changed the definition of small and medium enterprises in India, but also has said that there will be collateral free loans as well that will be given, and PSUs mostly will now be looking at clearing the dues of small and medium enterprises in the next 45 days. The big concern for small and medium enterprises has always been the liquidity issue. How are you, in your conversations for the next aid that is coming, how are you telling the government to address some of the liquidity issues, mostly on account of the government run companies or governments, the government tenders that the MSMEs are facing?
First, I think it's important to recognize the strategy here. Starts off with health, moves to social protection, and then moves towards the third component, which is economic stabilization. And MSMEs are central to that third component. So logically, this overall program is, I think, one of the most comprehensive focus on the impact of COVID. In the story of MSME, I think you're absolutely right, and government recognizes this, that both RBI and government has created quite a bit of liquidity in the market. The challenge now is to take that liquidity down to the retail level in the hands of MSME. And for that, government is beginning to look at different transmission mechanisms. And I think it's going to be a combination of banks, of NBFCs, of housing banks, the retail structure of intermediation that currently exists in India needs to be leveraged. And to leverage it, what is critical and what government has announced is the de-risking of the problems that MSMEs show. In that de-risking, you're going to be able to bring in greater intermediation and movement of the liquidity from the wholesale into the retail. But I have to add that one more area is that even as government puts in the liquidity, the biggest liquidity is capital markets. So a lot of these guarantee mechanisms, the de-risking mechanism, is also aimed to bring in capital markets into the story. And I think that this is going to be a very, very big storyline of how the intermediation functions and how to link the guarantee systems into the intermediation. The World Bank is currently working with government to actually support this third phase, the economic stabilization around MSMEs also.
The aim, of course, is to create world-class not just companies but small and medium enterprises and firms here in India as well. We've done significantly well on the World Bank's ease of doing business report. Do you believe that the stage is set for the next set of reforms as well, Junaid? In fact, a lot is being talked about even after Prime Minister Narendra Modi has offered a 20 lakh crore rupee vaccine for the Indian economy. What do you make of the kind of announcements that have been made so far? And what do you think that the government should do in the days to come in terms of the much needed reforms that the country should see?
I think you're hearing it in what government is saying, that the interventions that government is making is not just an emergency relief intervention. It is one where the intervention is dealing with the crisis, but using the crisis to really open up the storyline for a reformed economy, an economy that can lift off on the basis of the intervention. So in the social protection system, as you can see, it's not only about putting in more resources into the social protection. I mean, Government of India, through the Garib Kalyan Yojana, has announced $24 billion into the social protection system, but it's also improving the functioning of the social protection system. So clearly a focus on the reforms. Similarly, on the MSME, it's not only about delivering liquidity, but improving the intermediation that happens. And the intermediations will require de-risking, which means that Government of India will have to improve its guarantee systems. And these guarantee systems are not short-term measures, but are really there to provide long-term support to the economy. So both on the social protection as well as on the MSME, the intention is indeed not only to provide a response to the current crisis, but to begin and support a reform process that continues to improve the systems that support India. In the case of MSME, I have to say that there's a delicate balance that Government of India needs to undertake, which is stabilization but with sustainability. Because you could always give stabilization by handing out grants to MSME. That would not ensure sustainability. So the use of credit markets and guarantees are done precisely to ensure that stabilization is matched with future sustainability. That way you're keeping both an economic response to the emergency aligned with future reforms for the economy.
Junaid, before I let you go, and I have to ask you on the fiscal as well as the monetary steps that the government is taking. We did see the RBI going ahead and infusing liquidity of as much as 8 lakh crores into the market. But the flip side to that argument is that if there is no demand, then what will you do with all that liquidity that the banks are flushed with? On the other hand, the government is also, they have said that they will be increasing their borrowing programs significantly, but a large part of it is mostly being seen to offset the kind of loss in revenues that we have seen due to the economic activity being stalled. Having said that, how do you see that panning out vis-a-vis, of course, the fact that nothing is being done to put money in the hands of people, and that until and unless that happens, there will be no demand creation?
I think the crisis, the COVID crisis around the world, has created a major economic issue for countries. There has to be a supply response and there has to be a demand response. And the challenge is figuring out how to match the two. In the case of India, what the social protection system is doing, it's putting cash in the hands of citizens. The whole bank account systems and the delivery of resources through the banking system not only provides cash to help people stabilize their context, but begin to have some money that they can use for investment also. But let's be very clear that right now the focus is on stabilization, the focus is on social protection, and the economic revival that's coming is the one that's going to give the impetus on the demand side. The whole debate about how to move from a strict lockdown to a incremental opening of the economy, an adaptive removal of the lockdown, I think will provide the demand side impetus that everyone is looking for. Because after all, you need the economy to function for that demand to come in. It's a fine balance, and it's a balance in which governments around the world, not only India, is trying to figure out how you create social protection, just protecting vulnerable and the poor, stabilizing economic assets as in the MSME, and slowly bringing them into an economic revival. I think that countries around the world have given up the hope that it's a V-shaped storyline of a rapid decline and a rapid increase. I think everyone is getting ready for a gradual increase, and precisely because demand has to come back, and it'll come back slowly. It's not going to come back overnight. It's a tricky balance. There's no blueprint, but it's one that will require, as you correctly say, both a supply side and a demand side intervention.
Junaid, I know we've taken 15 minutes of your time, but this is going to be my last question. I just want to understand from you, a lot of global agencies, brokerages are now pegging India growth for FY21 at close to 0%. This is, of course, going to be a big worry for an emerging market, an emerging economy like India. But once the kind of stimulus that the government is talking about, once that gets put in place, how do you see the recovery happening, and where do you see, when do you see India getting back to that growth trajectory of at least 6 to 7%?
I wish I had an answer for that question. I think that's the question that everyone is asking in this country: government, civil society, India Inc. But I think what we need to focus on is what measures is government actually taking. And as I said, the measures of health intervention, measures of social protection, measures of economic stabilization, I think these are exactly the right arenas to engage. And within these arenas, I think government is going to learn about its impact, adjust. And I think in keeping this adjustment going, that's really what's going to feed into the growth path. By the way, every single country in the world is facing this dilemma of growth rates falling. United States, Europe, growth rates are in the negatives. What we are hoping is that the emerging countries will be able to keep their growth rates slightly in the positive. That's going to be very important for global rates to come through. We're talking about the Brazils of this world, Indias of this world, the Indonesias of this world, Turkeys of this world. Today, these countries are a very important part of the global engine. So I'm hoping that the interventions of 10% of GDP, monetary and fiscal interventions, will provide a platform that keeps India above the 0% in terms of growth. The world needs it, and India needs it.
All right, on that note, Junaid, always a pleasure chatting with you, and we look forward to speaking with you once again when that aid comes in for the small and medium enterprises as well. But with that, it's back to you in the studios.
Thank you.